Joining me today is Gerald Huebner. He is a board member of Christian Camping International Ukraine. Before we get to the trip that is upcoming for you, Gerald, I would love to hear, do you have a history of going to Ukraine with this organization?
I have been going to Ukraine since about 1997. My first number of trips in Ukraine, I was working in agriculture and did some teaching on agricultural production in Ukraine. So a number of trips there during those years, and then I got tapped on the shoulder and asked whether I would help with some camping ministry in Ukraine. I was asked to go to Ukraine to help them learn how to do canoeing. In a former life, and many years ago, I actually met my wife at camp where I was the canoeing instructor. And so I went over there to teach them how to teach canoeing, and then got involved in the camping organization and have been to Ukraine quite a few times, probably about 20 times. And I was there in October together with my wife. And I'm going back again in beginning of May.
Wow. Okay, so I would love to hear about this upcoming trip, the heart behind it, and definitely some of the barriers that might be in place for something like this.
Well, it's an interesting situation, Sylvia, because people will ask me questions like, don't you know there's a war there? And actually, yes, I do know that. That's the reason that I'm going, in part. We, as an international board, are wanting to go and encourage. The Ministry of Christian Camping International Ukraine is one where we train, equip, advise, and help camps across Ukraine. So these are Christian camps that many of them will look very much like our camps here in Canada. So if you go to Red Rock Camp or Roseau River or Winkler Bible Camp, you'll walk into these camps, and yes, they'll speak a different language, but much of camping is the same all over the world. Some of the camps are more of like I would say, a VBS or day camp, but churches are operating camps all across the country to be able to proclaim the gospel, to be able to tell the children, just like in Canada, about the good news of Jesus Christ. And during these times of war, it's even more important, as the camps also operate or have operated as refugee centers and are taking in people throughout the country. So this has been going on now since the fall of the Soviet Union. And the organization of Christian camping in Ukraine has been going on now for 27 years. And we would normally have about 65,000 campers per year that would be going to camps in Ukraine. That's down a bit. We're hopeful that we will have somewhere around 40,000 or 45,000 campers even now this camping season. And I'll be participating in a camp leader training conference. Now, this is the last of a series of these training conferences that we've been doing. And we know that we will have over 250 camps that are operating in Ukraine this summer that are basically preaching the gospel and showing Christ's love every day.
Amazing. So when are you going, and what sort of, like, are you facing any barriers to fly into Ukraine right now?
Well, unless you take a fighter jet, you can't fly into Ukraine. It's the airspace is closed, so I will be traveling by bus into Ukraine. In my case, I'll be traveling into Poland, and then taking transportation from there. But before I go to Ukraine, I'll actually be meeting some of our staff at a Christian Camping Worldwide conference in Netherlands, where they'll be presenting and meeting with camp leaders from around the world. So I'll be part of that, and then we will make our way to Ukraine, and I will be entering Ukraine on the 3rd of May.
Okay. How many people are going into Ukraine with you to do this?
The people that are going into Ukraine with me is one of our staff, actually. So it's one of our staff that lives in Ukraine and works there full time. She'll be speaking at the conference in Netherlands, and she'll be traveling together with me to Lviv, which is in the west of Ukraine, where we'll be there for several days for a camp leaders conference, and then we'll make our way to other parts of the country.
bit of a personal question, but are you nervous to do this?
Am I nervous? A friend of mine told me recently that the safest place that I could be is in the center of God's will. And so I would say, no, I'm not nervous. I have preparations. The reason I'm not nervous is because I believe that is what God wants me to do. And secondly, I have somewhere close to 500 people that are committed to praying for the mission while I'm away. And that's my insurance, and that's my assurance that God is behind this. And if there's a message here today, Sylvia, is that if people are interested in ministry in Ukraine, I would love to take them along. Now, people will say, I'd love to come, but I can't. Well, actually, you can. You can come along with me virtually because I will be sending back a report every day of what I see and what I hear of God's hand at work. So if people are interested, they can come along with me virtually and pray. And we've set up a Facebook page. So it's called simply Ukraine Prayer Team. If you search Facebook groups, you'll find it. Or you can send me an email, and we'll put people on an email circulation list for those that aren't into Facebook.
Fantastic. We will definitely let people know about that. But for our listeners on the radio, just even shortly, how can we best pray for you and the team?
The two things that when I ask my friends in Ukraine, how can we pray for them? First of all, they would say, please don't forget about us. These are believers who are proclaiming the word, and they would just say, we know that the news changes. We know that the news can be tiresome, and sometimes we're not sure what to believe. But they would say, please don't forget about us. And then the prayer request is simple. Pray that they would not grow weary of doing good. That really is the prayer request that they have. Is they don't ask for prayer for safety, they don't ask for prayer for money, they ask for prayer that they would not grow weary of doing good. And when I hear of how God's hand is at work, it is truly exciting.
Do you happen to have a story or two of God moving in this last year?
There's so many stories, but I'll when the people meet me, they look at me and they say, Gerald, you are so brave. And these are people who have gone into occupied territory to operate camps. So they'll cross, not just go close to the front line of the war, but cross over it and go into the occupied territory and do a vacation Bible school, a day camp, an outreach ministry. So they're going into these places and they think I'm brave. The protection that God provides for the ministries that are there. Over and over again, we heard stories of camps where they would get a phone call in the early days of the war and say, we've got a busload of orphans, we've got a busload of people, we've got a convoy of vehicles. Can we come to your camp? Because we need a place where we can be for a while, a place of refuge. And the camps would generally say, no, because we're not winterized. It's wintertime. We don't have heat. We don't have facilities for you. And that people would say, well, we've got a busload of people. We've got these orphans. We've got these people. Can we come? And inevitably, they would say, yes, you can come. And the people would arrive, and the people would keep arriving, and the camps would be full to the brim. And they would not have the money to buy the firewood or the food or the things that they need, but God provided. God provided the ways of doing these things in miraculous ways. When they went to the town to try to find food, and they didn't have the money to buy it, when they came out to their car was full of food. They would be in places that over and over again, God simply provided in ways that were beyond what we can say. That's just good planning or strategic thinking. It was God was providing for them and protecting them in phenomenal ways. And there was story after story like that, where cars that should have run out of fuel because they drove much farther than the tank was filled for, and they didn't run out of fuel. The tank was still topped, close to full by the time they got there, and God provided in ways that, should we be surprised where we have a God who can feed thousands with a few fish and a few buns? But God is providing in miraculous ways and using people in phenomenal ways.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We really appreciate it. And we're going to ask our listeners to pray. But is there any other way that people can support you if they want to?
Well, we are collecting money. And people are looking for opportunities to be part of exciting ministries around the world. We're collecting money to be able to help the camps because they've used up their budgets in the wintertime. In up to this point, they're going to do camp no matter what. So whether we give them money or don't give them the money, they will do camp, but they'll do a better camp, a bigger camp, and be able to take in more campers if we can help support them. So we are collecting money to give to camps in Ukraine for them to be able to have campers, even more campers this year. And our goal is to be able to have at least another 10,000 kids be able to go to camp as a result of it. So yes, there is an opportunity to support financially, and we have status for a charitable status in both the U.S. and Canada, and they can find that at our website, cciukraine.org.
Lovely. Thank you so much for taking the time, Gerald. I'll be praying for you, and I just really appreciate your heart for all of this, especially even in this time. I'll be praying for you and appreciate you sharing with us.
Thank you, Sylvia.